that will be a huge asset to the Supreme Leader.
I think this is a very important point, and the fact of the matter is, the United States support, which currently is in question, for Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, should be reconsidered. It should be there should be support for Egypt. That's the bottom line, because it's also a stabilizing force in this region to contend also with the Islamist Hamas. But this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Colonel Rayburn and Dr. Lerman for being part of today's panel. I'd like to thank Mr. Hogan as well. Shalom from me here in Jerusalem. Until tomorrow, when we'll have a series of additional updates as well.
We begin this newscast with the top story tonight. Israel giving Gaza City residents a 6-hour window Saturday to evacuate to the south. Now the Israeli military is gearing up for the next stages of war with Hamas, including widespread airstrikes and significant ground operations. 1 week after Hamas launched its attacks, killing 1,300 people, 29 Americans confirmed among the dead. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visiting soldiers on the front line near the Gaza border Saturday, preparing for a ground invasion. More than 1 million civilians in war-torn Gaza notified to flee from the north to the south. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is intensifying, with more than 2,000 people dead. The White House says President Biden spoke with the Palestinian Authority president to discuss humanitarian aid. Biden also holding a call with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. The World Health Organization says they sent medical supplies to support Gaza, those supplies landing in Egypt Saturday close to the Rafah crossing. The supplies have yet to be deployed, however, as the organization waits for humanitarian access through the only open crossing out of Gaza. U.S. Secretary.
What I wish for her, that she is kidnapped and not murdered. Because if she is kidnapped and if Hamas is holding her, there's a good chance that I will be able to see her again.
This family's nightmare is being felt across Israel. Saturday's violent attack and ensuing airstrike barrage has killed over 1,000 people across the country. In the week since, hundreds of funerals have taken place across the country, with many Israelis branding this as their And Israelis I've been speaking to say this really is a nationwide nightmare. Everybody there knows somebody who has been personally affected in this crisis, and with several Americans among the hundreds who have been killed or kidnapped, the White House says it is doing everything to get Americans home safely. Reporting for Newsnet, I'm Ryan Thompson.
Diplomatic outreach across the Middle East and beyond, attempting to rally an international response to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from expanding. Blinken meeting with the Saudi foreign minister before stopping in the United Arab Emirates. He continues to work on ways to help civilians trapped by the fighting, as well as addressing the ongoing humanitarian crisis. Here in the U.S., the conflict raising fears of lone actor terrorism. Police in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and other U.S. cities increasing patrols in fears of violence inspired by the Israel-Hamas war. But law enforcement officials stress there are no credible threats on U.S. soil. FBI Director Christopher Wray Saturday warning a conference of law enforcement officials in San Diego to be on the lookout for lone actors around the U.S. who might be inspired by Hamas. A former Hamas leader's call for a day of rage put American Jewish communities on edge, sparking heightened security around temples, schools, and cultural institutions. The worry, a sign of how the war between Israel and Hamas is reverberating around the world, creating fear in communities even in the absence of a credible threat. Turning now to Afghanistan, the U.S. providing $12 million in immediate humanitarian assistance in the wake of multiple devastating earthquakes, killing nearly 1,200 victims there. More than 2,000 injured in the quakes, destroying 12 villages with over 1,000 homes. With Afghanistan's economy in free fall, the country struggles with the humanitarian crisis following the Taliban takeover in 2021, triggering massive cuts in foreign aid to the country.
Pictures of the airstrikes, you can see them here. Right now, they're on alert for sirens. She says once sirens start going off, they only have about a minute to get to shelter. Not to mention, some of their neighbors don't have the accessibility to their own shelter space. So Shifton says they try to fit in as many as 11 people in the small space they do have. On your screen here is video her family took while volunteering and organizing aid for those being evacuated from Gaza. She says her heart breaks seeing families torn apart and with no end in sight.
We talk about trauma, and the first thing that we say to people that had trauma is, you're safe now, it's okay, it's over. But we couldn't say it to them because it's not true. They are not safe, it's not over, and we're still missing a lot of people that we don't know where they are, what they are going through right now. So we are still in this.
Israel's designated time to evacuate Gaza is up. She and her family are one of the thousands trying to navigate life in a war zone and help those affected by the war. Disney says it's donating $1 million to an organization that provides medical and blood banking services in Israel. The company also reportedly donating another $1 million to other nonprofit organizations working in the region, with a focus on those that are helping children.
In Ukraine, students going back to school 2 years after the Russian invasion, changing what and even where students learn. Some now spending their days underground in the subway, others learning how to handle a weapon. Newsnet international correspondent Ryan Thompson spending time in the classroom and brings us this report.
Of air raid sirens wailing almost daily. Only a third of Ukraine students have returned to the classroom. Russia's invasion has had major consequences for education in this country, with cities like Kharkiv going to extreme lengths to keep children safe. Classes in the subway.
The proximity to the border and the time it takes for rockets to arrive from Russia makes it impossible for us to have an organized evacuation of kids from classrooms to shelters.
Valerie Chappelle is part of the team managing 17 underground classrooms that over 1,100 students now call school. More than half of the district's buildings have been destroyed in Russian attacks. Right now, the city is under an air raid alert, meaning that Russian missiles and bombs could drop here at any time. Soviet-era metro stations like this one were designed to withstand the effects of a potential attack like that. And during the course of this war, they've gone from being a shelter to now a school. In the classroom, the students are all smiles, grateful to have a taste of normal childhood, even if it's only for a few days a week.
Children enjoy studying here because they can communicate with friends and teachers. When we were teaching them remotely, not all students had the opportunity to connect to lessons and turn on their cameras. Us teachers couldn't really see if the children were studying or paying attention to the lesson.
But growing up in a conflict has its own challenges, and as we observed, these kids aren't strangers to weapons. In fact, some high school students are being trained to defend their homeland. Monthly civic courses are now led by members of the armed forces, who teach how to spot mines, respond to gunshots, and even fire a Kalashnikov. You are 16 years old. Today is a school day, and you are picking up an arm and potentially learning how to fight for your country. How does that feel?
I feel really sad because of situation in my country. I don't understand why is everything like this happens, and I literally hate the country like Russia because of this. But I think that if my country will really need my protection, I will do everything for it, and I will work to make my country much better.
Sophia's resolve is shared by her classmates, but that's a worry for some mental health specialists.
And it's really traumatic experience.
Mexico, and Texas. A solar eclipse that millions of people across the U.S. and Latin America experienced as a ring of fire in their local skies. After leaving the Texas Gulf Coast, the eclipse continued its path to Mexico, Central America, Colombia, and Brazil.
They have a famous 25-foot earth goddess made from 18,000 annuals that are pruned daily. Not to mention, there are over 2,000 varieties of orchids. The Fioli Botanical Garden in Woodside, California is like a scene out of Bridgerton, featuring a walled garden, fruit and vegetable gardens, and not to mention the almost 55,000 square foot mansion on the property.
And at this time of year, tourists say that the Missouri Botanical Gardens' 75 acres turn reds and golds. And they also hold tours for their Victorian-era observatory. That's a look at your travel report. For Newsnet, I'm Madison Schlegel.